yeah. I mean, you can't be in my business and be serious about it without climbing a tower at least once or twice. I painted 3 in a directional array myself. They weren't very tall. They were 195. There were 4 of them. I painted 3, and by the time I got to the 4th one, I'm going to get somebody else to do this. And the other one, the highest I've ever been, was I was up that 1,000-footer. I didn't go up all the way to the top. We had some idiot shooting at a beacon light that with a 22, and he put a slug into our heliax. You know, I told you it was pressurized with dry air and nitrogen. Well, he put a 22 caliber slug in it, shooting at the beacon light at about the 400-foot level. So you buy a patch kit to go up and patch it. We looked at it with a TDR. We couldn't see anything on it, but you could see on one side of it where the bullet went in. There's a hole there, and then you could see a dent straight across from it on the other side. So he pretty much hit it dead center. So it went in one side, went right through the center conductor. I couldn't tell for sure, but, you know, if you look at the angle, it looks like it went right through the center conductor. And I hoped it didn't leave some kind of a sharp shard or something sticking out, pointing over towards the outer conductor, which would have been a great place to arc. But they make a patch kit for that, which is basically a big old piece of neoprene rubber, I'd say about 5 inches long, that's molded to form around the corrugations in the outer copper conductor. So and it's slit on one side. So you just kind of put that around there, and then you put a couple of hose clamps on it, and then you put silicone all around there, and then you tape it all up with about 2 rolls of black tape, and then you silicone it some more, and you got this big old blob when you're done. But I fixed that. Gosh, that's been 30 years ago, and I don't think it's ever leaked or they've ever had a problem. So we did keep the claim open on the insurance because, I tell you, know, we had just put that line up. It had been up for about a year and a half, and it was a $70,000 job to put that line up there. And back then, the line was about $35 a foot. And then you had to take the old line down and put the new line up and rig the tower with, you know, the load line and the winch truck and all of that stuff. And then you had to have the guys crawling around up there. So it was an expensive job. I'd hate to see what it was today. And I tell you, there's some guys over in Oklahoma that are going to wish they hadn't done what they did. This was just a couple of weeks ago. There was I want to say it was a 600-foot tower, and they went over there and ended up knocking the thing down to steal the copper off the transmission line off the thing. They knocked it down. For a couple of $100 of copper, they destroyed a $500,000 tower. And I tell you what, if they get caught, those guys are going to be in for a long time. They're going to be in so deep, they're going to have to pump daylight with a hose. WB9JNZ KS5I. I'm sure it's got a hole in it, but it's been sitting there putting about 20 kilowatts through it for 30 years. WB9JNZ KS5. Well, actually, what they were doing is they were riding the load line. They were all clipped onto the load line, and what happened was the load line, you know, and this is all hearsay, all right? I don't know because I wasn't there. I was living here already. But I heard that the load line got caught in a cross member of the tower, and the guy running the winch didn't notice it, pulled the load line in two, and it collapsed or severed, and they fell down. Was the deal on that. But I got to tell you a story. When I crawled up there to fix that bullet hole, I took a friend of mine's handy-talkie up there. And after I got done messing around with the bullet hole, I got on 5-2. It's a QRZ. Gave my call sign on 5-2. Anybody around? I got a guy in Mobile in a little town about 35 miles away. And he comes back, and I told him, we exchanged pleasantries, and he said, well, where are you? What's QTH? And I said, well, I'm down here in Sioux City. And he was in this little town called, it's either Akron or Orange City. It was about 35 miles away. And he said, what are you using? And I said, I just got a little 5-watt handy-talkie. And he said, man, you're coming in full quieting. He said, the band must really be up. And I said, no, I'm up. I'm at the 400-foot level on Channel 14's television tower. And, that explains it. WB9, JNZ, KS5I. Yeah, WB9JNZ, KS5I. Well, if you're interested in this stuff, take a look at my QRZ page. I've got pictures of several of those transmitters and a tower. We got it's a little under, excuse me, a little under 600 feet, the one that's on there. But the interesting stuff is it is a 100,000-watt FM station on the same tower as a 1,000-watt AM station. And the tower is series fed, so it's sitting on an insulator. It's got insulators in all the guy lines, so there's no resonant frequency that's going to re-radiate in any of the guy lines. But we've got to get that 20,000 watt, I think it's 21,000 at this station, 21.8 if I remember right, across the base insulator without shorting out the tower. So we have two big brass coils inside. I can't explain how the darn thing works. Matter of fact, I asked the guy at the company that built it. He's PhD in electronics, and he says, I can't thoroughly explain everything myself. He said some of us just kind of consider it black magic, but we've learned how to do it, and we know it works. So there you go. But anyway, take a look at that if you're interested. You can see the inside of that isocoupler. I didn't want to look at the inside because they left it out in the winter, and this thing is in Minnesota, and it sat out all winter. And between the snow and everything, well, it got moisture inside the coax. And when I say coax, it's 3-inch hardline rigid inside of that thing. And I had to take that all out, and there's a bunch of Teflon, and a big rod that goes around the center conductor, and it forms a capacitor with the outside of the center conductor, and that's in series with these coils, which are just big loops, brass loops, and they are all oriented and just perfectly. We had to use a spectrum analyzer to make sure we got it back right together again. And that was after we marked everything, taking it apart. And darn if it didn't work. 22,000 watts of forward power coming back through it. And doesn't get any better than that. But you can see all of that if you're interested in it. And I also got another transmitter on there. That one's got a 4CX15,000 in it, so you can kind of see how that works too. WB9JMZ, KS5I. Yeah, well, I got a couple of them. The antenna is an old one. It's a TA-33, which I bought in 1974, and it was used then. Now, I just had it down here this last summer and replaced a couple of traps. I was going to replace all of them, but I didn't get them in time, and I wanted to get the thing back up. So I got 4 new traps for both the reflector and the director. The driven element I've already changed. So that's the antenna. The rig, I got 3 of them set here. I've got an old Thomas kit with UM2, the Yaesu FT1000 Mark V, and the one I'm talking to you on is an ICOM 7610. And I have an amp on behind it. It's an SB220 that has been totally redone, and it's just loafing along about 550 watts right now. The ICOM is putting out 25, and the 220 has taken that up to 500, and I have 7/8 hardline going up to the antenna. It's only 40 feet, but I've got a bunch of it coiled up at the base of the tower. I probably have got about 100 feet of hardline out there. But I always thought maybe someday I'd put the tower up higher, but if I were to guess, I'd say that's not going to happen. WB9JSC, KS5I. WB9JNZ, KS5I. I think you'd have a hard time getting the Flightstron to work at this frequency. They really like UHF, way up there, 400 plus megahertz. Anyway, what was I going to comment on? Oh, you said you had an FTDX 101. How do you like that thing? When I got the ICOM here, I was looking at the FTDX 101, and I was also looking at the 7610. And I kind of think I would have liked the 101 better. I mean, the 7610 is a fine radio. It works really, really good. It's probably more radio than I need or I'm even proficient at using. But I guess I'm more of a Yaesu guy, and I've had 3. I also have an old 757 GX Yaesu. And I had a 107M, that was that beige-colored one, for a long time. So I guess, if I found a deal with somebody who's going to 101D, I might seriously consider it. But anyway, I was wondering, how do you like yours? You got anything you don't like about it? And I was then going to ask you, or tell you, that SB220 is one of the best linears, I think, out there. Some people say it wasn't built heavy enough. That thing was built fine. You know, if you want to tell the AM limited is not going to handle it. But for single sideband, that is probably the most forgiving, easiest to tune up transmitter that I've ever seen. And yeah, it's peanut power compared to some of the stuff that I've tuned up. But you know, it's just very, very forgiving. I have a 10-tech Tyson 2 here with the big old Russian tetrode in it, the 4CX 1600B. Now that thing is a little touchy to tune. But, I mean, when it tunes, it's a great amp. But for somebody new that's not real good at tuning up amplifiers, that SP220 is tough to beat. I mean, I loaded one into a load that was totally screwed up one time, didn't know it. There was no drama, no spits and sparking, no fireballs. I mean, all it did was wouldn't tune right. So that's my thought on that. So tell me about your 101 WB9 JMZ KS5i. Yeah, Eric, WB9 JMZ KS5i. Well, that's pretty much what I would say about my 7610. It's pretty good at pulling out weak signals. I've compared it with my FT1000, which is one of the best radios the A2 ever made. And this one is the Mark V, so it's the 200 watt version. And the ICOM and it are very, very similar. If I can hear them with a good signal on the 1000, I can hear them on the ICOM and vice versa. I've never found one that I could hear something that I couldn't hear on the other one. So I'd say they're pretty comparable. Now, the noise reduction doesn't seem to do all that much. Now, I may not be doing it right again, but on the ICOM that is, it knocks the band noise down, but it also knocks the signal down. It's kind of like an attenuator. Now, I'm sure it does more than that, but that's how it seems to work to me. But you know, I'm going to tell you, Eric, I'm more of a rag chewer. I'm not one of these guys that is chasing rare DX to get that one guy on the island that went out there for 3 days after the island comes up once every 30 years so I can put him in the logbook. That's just too much work. These guys that work QRP, yeah, that's nice. The trouble is the guy on the other end's got to do all the work. Oh, yeah, I talked to this guy in Omaha, and I only had 2 watts. Well, the poor guy in Omaha is sitting there with his ear right up next to the speaker trying to hear his 2 watts. Oh, my. I like to kick back in the chair and just like we're doing right now and just have a nice little QSO there. And you're a good solid S9, Eric. So I'm copying you fine. Go ahead. JNZ, KF5. Well, there are a lot of radios out there, and that's why I prefaced all my comments when I said, it's a matter, I guess I'm a Yaesu guy. Because there's nothing about this 7610 that I really don't like. I tell you what, it's got a great receiver. Where it blows my FT1000 away is on AM. There's some guys down in Texas that get on AM 7160. And I join them every so often. And this icon sounds just like, an AM broadcast receiver. I mean, it's got some really nice frequency response. Where the Yaesu on receive just sounds kind of muddy. It just doesn't have the high end. And that might be, again, because I have it set that way. But I know I've got to go into the way down in the menu, and I've got this laminated page that came with this thing that you got to get into the menu to change the bandwidth settings and all that. And I nutsed around with that. I've had this thing probably 10, 12 years. I bought it used. I got the Icon used. This thing, well, once I got it set to where it seemed to sound pretty good, and it sounds excellent on receive. It just, not really. I like the Icon better on AM, but I don't work enough AM to mount to a hill of beans, so I guess it's not a big deal. But I just got started off with the Yaesus, and I've had them for 35, 40 years. And I guess, that's just the way it is. That's probably more me than the radio. WB9, JNZ, JS5. Yeah, I wish my wife felt a little differently about that. She hates radio. Now, she tolerates the ham rig, but when I've got to go out to a broadcast station, she doesn't like that at all. I ask her if she wants to come along. Are you kidding? I hate transmitter sites. Well, she's been out to a lot of them over the years. I remember one time we went out to this. It had 3 FM stations on it, and I had to work on them. We had classic rock out there. That one had a 30 kilowatt transmitter. And it was in the middle of the top of a hill with a soybean field. So it was got this big old, what's that big light, they have out there? Halogen or whatever, the big yard light. Well, they had one of these right over the door. And there is a big circle of bugs. I mean, it was solid bugs in a big diameter sphere shape, all around that light. And I mean, there were big bugs and little bugs and all sizes of bugs you could ever imagine. And you had to go right through that big swarm to get in the building. Well, I had to go first and unlock the door. I said, all right, come on in here. She comes running through that. And I'll bet you, just in that little time she ran through that swarm, she had about a half a dozen to a dozen bugs in her hair. And there was a couple of those big old June bug-sized ones in there. And I mean, she's shaking her hair and running. Ted, this is a hellhole, she said. And she's running her hand through her hair, trying to shake the bugs out. She said, don't you ever ask me to come out here again. And then there was another time I was working on one of these directional stations, and the darn coil had jumped off the track. And it was an old E.F. Johnson phaser. And it had coils stacked behind coils, adjustable ones. So there's one in the front, and then there's another one, and then there's another big capacitor. And you had to get up in there to get to the front one because the tuning mechanism had jumped off the track and had this little thing that ran on the coil, and then it slid up and down this conducting bar. So you would change the inductance. I had to take this great big coil in the power divider out so I could get in there, and I was too big. I couldn't fit. So I got her out there. She's laying on her back, upside down, inside this phaser. Are you sure it's safe in here? You've got this thing turned off? I said, yes, I've got the door open and the interlock is on and the power is pulled on the wall so it isn't coming on. Because if I get killed in here, I'm going to be really ticked. Well, she fixed that. She's still talking about that. That was 40 years ago. So I don't even ask her to go to the transmitter with me anymore. WB9JNZ KS5I. To answer your question in a word, no. You need more license verification to run your ham radio than you do to run a 100,000-watt broadcast station. You don't need any license. They don't even issue one anymore. It used to be the third-class radio telephone operator permit. That would let you take meter readings, on the smaller stations. Then you had to have the first-class radio telephone if you were going to work on a directional station or anything over 10 kilowatts, as I recall. And I do have one of those. And then they did away with that, and they replaced it with the lifetime radio telephone license. Let's see, what do they call that thing? General Radio Telephone Operator License. That was in 1985. So you can apply for that if you have a first-class radio telephone. They give you one of those. It was just something that you could put on the wall. You know, I still got mine, and it's still on the wall. If you wanted to go out and work on a station, you can go work on it. Basically, what the FCC says is to the ownership of the station. You can hire whoever you want to work on this thing, but if we come in and inspect it, and you're out of tolerance, you're going to get the cover. So where's your answer? Yeah, go ahead. By the way, you're 15 over 9. And you vary down to an F9 up to 15 over. So go ahead. Switch over and I'll give you a report. KF5I. KF5I. Kilo Victor here. Could you give me a radio check? Well, you're making it. You're about an F7, and then you'll fade down to a 5, which is just above the noise level. And then you'll go up to a 9 for a little bit. You're varying around in there between 5 and 9. Over. I'll do a little experiment here. Hang on. Now with 32 watts. This is the exciter all by itself, 32 watts. And there's the amplifier back on 500. Over. And it'll be that way. That's about what you were. But then I would hear noise coming in, and I'd have to listen with my ear right down there. So with your other radio, you definitely were easier to copy. And you know that's about true. I tell you, 400 to 500 watts is kind of a sweet spot. If you figure your signal is okay, but you got to work at it a little bit with 100 watts, if you can get that up to 100 or 400, it takes 4 times the power to double the signal strength. And that makes a huge difference, as you can see it did. And then you got to go to 1600 if you're going to double it again. So it isn't practical. So I mean, 400 500 is really a comfortable for me. Over. WB9, JNZ, KS5I. Well, I had one, the one on 1470. That one had the main lobe going straight north. 5,000 watts was actually 5,400 was the transmitter output power. And in the main lobe, headed north on the directional pattern, it looked like a 4-leaf clover with one great big leaf. The minor lobes were about a kilowatt in each lobe, and the main lobe was about 16.5 kilowatts. And in the middle of the winter, I would always get a bunch of QSL cards from Ole, Sven, and all these guys over in the Scandinavian countries. They'd be sitting out there with a mile of wire listening to American broadcast stations. And I would Sweden and Finland and Norway and Denmark, and I used to get, half a dozen reports every winter, it seemed, from somebody over there. Didn't have any that were clear channel. I'm familiar with some of those. There's one over in Little Rock. It used to be clear channel. Well, it wasn't clear channel. Clear channel is nobody else on the frequency. But this one was on the same frequency as WBAL in Baltimore. So it had a really sharp null going east towards Baltimore. But it was 50,000 watts at night, probably 150,000 in the main lobe, and you could hear that thing all the way from Canada to Cuba. It would come in down there in Havana, just like a local when the conditions were good. Heck, you could probably hear it if you were in Chicago. It's KAAY, 1090 in Little Rock. Over. One at Tijuana. Wolfman Jack was on that station back in the 60s. You remember him? Yeah, no, he was primarily up and down the coast. I think that thing was 500 kilowatts. It was either 250 or 500, I can't remember. But, I grew up listening to a station right there in Chicago, the Big 89. I listened to those guys a whole bunch, Yeah, I think I remember her. She was on there with John Records Landecker. And let's see, they had Yvonne Daniels, Dick Biondi, Larry Lujak, Fred Winston, Lyle Dean, Chris Eric Stevens, Steve Lundy, Gary Gears. You want me to keep going? was way back before they went top 40. You know what WLS stood for, don't you? Yeah, wasn't it owned by Sears? Oh, yeah, I remember Larry Lou Jack. Uncle Lair. I think he's passed away. He's long gone. Fred Winston is still there. Fred was one of my favorites. I always liked him. He was just funny. He was quick. He was doing a show on an oldies station, FM, there for a while. And something happened, and he's not there anymore. And heck, he's probably doing something on a radio station somewhere, because us old radio guys, you know, we want to be heard and not seen. That's what my mom always used to say. You need to be seen and not heard. No, I want to be heard and not seen. WB9, JNZ, KS5I. The guy just came in there and mentioned him. Yeah, I remember. He was on that same nostalgic celebration of however many years they'd been doing rock and roll. And then all these guys, I mean, they traveled around all over the place. Kind of like Dr. Johnny Fever on WKRP. It's all a blur, man. Where am I? What city is this? Oh, yeah, up and down the dial. That was, oh gosh, it was a wonderful life. Hobby became a career. Well, who's the other station that remember Tommy Edwards? Come on in there. The WB9 JNZ, this is KS5I. Sleeping by, there was one like that at WKRP where the record rep was paying one of the DJs to play something, and Johnny Fever was asleep in the back room by the water heater. Oh, I remember hearing stories about that kind of stuff. Well, hi, Jim. Nice to make your acquaintance there. Yeah, WCFL, Chicago Federation of Labor. That was a big one, too. And then there was CKLW in Detroit, Windsor. And, oh gosh, WCAR in Milwaukee. No, there were a lot of great stations. KAAY, Little Rock, KOMA in Oklahoma City. We used to hear them in northwest Iowa. And lots of memories there. Let me turn it over to Eric, WB9 JNZ. Do you hear Jim okay? This is KS5I. got WB9, JNC, and the KS5I. Well, in a word, Eric, it's called talent. They just have the natural ability. You can't train somebody to be a disc jockey. I mean, you can teach them the basics of how to do a record segue and how to do a liner and all of that. But the guys that really have the talent, they're just naturally creative and funny. I wish I had a little more of that talent. At 20 years old, the largest market I ever worked in was over in Tulsa, Oklahoma. There was a top 40 station over there out of the Boss area. It was KAKCC. And I was a disc jockey over there working for a consultant by the name of Paul Drew. And he was an excellent programmer. And it was a story that they always told you about. Do your best always because you never know who's listening. Well, I was on a station in Sioux City, and one day I got a call out of the blue, and it was from the program director of the station in Tulsa, and he had been given a tape of me that Paul had recorded. Sounded like he was quite a ways away, so he was probably going through Omaha, which was the closest large city. And we had to get a signal down, a relatively good signal down there, and I ended up in Tulsa. But I was working so hard just to try to keep up with the other guys, and I could see some of them. They just come in, sit down, and they just come out of them like, water off a duck. They were just naturally funny. And there was one guy, he started at CWMC in Fort Dodge, Iowa, which was a rural station, about 20,000 people in the town. Had a big signal, it was on 540. 5,000 watts, so it's good for the whole state of Iowa. And he ended up in San Francisco with Dr. Don Rose on KFRC. So it's amazing. If you've got talent, you can go a long, long way. Over to you, Jim. M9, HIW, and the KS5I. Oh, my name's Ted. AWBD. Short, pretty good.
WTY was one up there, 9 hours with 50 kilowatts. And then I've talked to a number of times. He was one of the engineers at that monitor. And he tells me a lot of stories, kind of fun to talk to. And when you're at the end of you look at you. That was a station back in the day down there in San Diego. And that, of course, we're going up to LLS, KLW, and WFL. And of course, what's top 40 for everybody to do WGA there in Chicago. Back to you, Eric. Jim is a copy of you with barely also WB9 and KS 5. All right, 73 to Eric, and thank you so much for coming back to my CQ, I think it was there, and sure enjoyed the conversation. And yeah, this is what I like to do, is just get on here and talk to people, and I've been so blessed, because like I said, the hobby became the career over 50 years ago, and here I am still playing radio. So take care, God bless, and we'll sign with you there, Eric, and turn it over to Jim for one more, and then I probably need to get out of here as well, as Jim said he needed to do also. So here she comes there, Jim, my friend, and HIWKS5I. Eric, he said he was 60 miles north of Chicago. All right, 73 is Jam, a pleasure. Hope we can hook up again. God bless you, man. Have a happy New Year. NHIW, KS5I is clear. Bye-bye. Testing 1, 2, 3 is the frequency in use. I just signed off of it. It's all yours, KS5I.